I hope you've got that popcorn ready. Sit back, relax, and watch as we build the world's first 3.6 litre 10:1 compression ratio 2JZ with the engine specialists Tomei Powered Japan. I can't tell you guys just how much this means to me to have such an incredible company cheering for me and believing in the vision. Let's do this.
3.6 であってフォーミュラ D が一番最初に富士でエキシビションでやった時にケンジ君が「佐藤さん出ましょうよ」って言ってきて、うちの100の 1J でポン付けタービンポン付けカムの400馬力でそんなもん勝てるわけねえじゃんって言って出たら当たり前のように負けて帰ってきて、で当時 3.4 の人たちってよそのクランクにうちの 2J のコンロットに SR の 2.2 のピストンをちょっと加工して使って 3.4 にしてる人多かったから、じゃあクランク作ったら 3.4 でいいから 3.4 作ろうかって一瞬思ったんだけど、一緒じゃつまんなくねってなって、そんで 3.6 作ったのね。
Recently, I know that a lot of engine builders claim that it's not necessary with current machining technology, but lapping the valves will ensure that 100% accuracy is achieved without any kind of guesswork and just hoping that the machinery got it right. It's now finished one pass, but you can see in certain places here it's definitely going to need another pass, which is pretty standard. It'd be really lucky if you got away with one pass, but one thing I want to look at are the little cutting blade. This moves at a particular speed to make sure it has the nicest finish possible on the head. Really nice piece of machinery, but I also just love that this bit of tooling here seems quite simple, where it's, you know, goes into the, I guess, I'm not entirely sure what that's called, a chuck maybe, and then it just gets welded into this bar with the blades and the tooling that goes in. Interesting. I guess I better go.
工程としてはクランクを測って、クランクのピン径、ジャーナル径を測って、メタル合わせをしていくので、その後メタルを取り付けして内径を、シリンダーゲージで測ると。
So first we're going to be going through the crank and measuring and double checking everything there. Then we'll be selecting the bearings using for that, and then we'll be going to the conrods. This is all the proper tooling, everything I've never used before. I've always just used plastic gauge. So this is going to be fun.
今度はシリンダーゲージといって内径を測る、測定器なんですけど、今0点を出すということで、
Oh, so they're using
まず基準値をこれで出して
micrometer to zero it. So the conrod right now is torque to spec with the bearing in there, and they're measuring to see what the clearance is to then match that up to the crankshaft to make sure it's within spec. They have this special crank mount that sits on the table, and then they're able to rotate the crank, clean it, measure it, and everything. There's a bearing built in this. This is so cool. Something I don't think I need, but I want it. Just to be able to do this.
It's a Christmas tree.
通じて 3.6 でトルクが出るので、最初からもうそれを見越して設計をしてます。
Yeah, so just looking at this, compared to other conrods I've seen, it's a lot thinner in this area here. And even here, this is a lot thicker for this H beam. It's really cool.
あとこちら側にはこう動くときに当たってしまうので、ここがこう広げられない分、ここはスリムなんで、その代わりこっちで強度を上げてるっていうのがある。
なるほど。すごい。 ここ
You
もだよ
understand what
ね
he just said?
Yeah, so because it's slimmer here, so it doesn't hit, right?
Yeah, because it moves.
It moves up and goes
Yeah.
against the cylinder inside the cylinder wall. This is why you also have to clearance your block, but you don't want to clearance it too much. So you got to design the conrod in a special way. But this is so thick because this is the, I guess like, stroke もでかいから、多分一番大事ですよねここ。大事ここ。This is like where the most of the pressure is going to be. Yeah, because the stroke is so much bigger in the crank as it's coming around. This is the part that's going to break if it ever breaks. But that's very cool to see.
予選落ちすんなよぐらい言っとけばね。
追走出ろよって。
追走絶対とか言っとけば。
So the last thing you would have seen us do is we showed you how we're checking all the clearances and stuff for the crank. We did the conrod bearings and then we measured the crank, but we hadn't been able to measure the block yet. Well, this is the block here and we've got a dummy head fitted to it. I've talked about this previously before, but this is a very important part because you need to have the block torqued down under the stress and the load of what it's going to be operating in a car with, which is with the head fully torqued down. And then when this is on here, you're then able to do all of the boring, and that way when the block is actually torqued down to spec, it's going to be in the same shape as what it was when you bored it. Sometimes if you bore these blocks without a dummy head torqued down on them, when a head is torqued onto them, they warp and twist and change, and you don't want that. That's going to cause problems, and you can get, you know, issues where your piston's going to move around in there like it shouldn't, wrong sizes and all that type of stuff. So using a dummy head is super important. And as you can see, they have one here. It's already been bored. It looks incredible. If you have a look in here, you can see how nice the boring is. But now I'm going to let Tomita-san explain what the next step is, because from there, that's kind of where my knowledge ends, and he's going to show us how they go through and measure to make sure that they're going to be getting the right bearing, thickness and size for the block and the crank to meet together.
まずこう室温を20度に保って、計測時のこのブロックの温度を20度にまず保ちます。
だから添付のガンある。
そうですね。これで測って20度というのを確認をして、でまず大丈夫ということで、正確な数字を出せるように。
Something I never really thought too seriously about was the temperature factor when it comes to assembling engines. Obviously things expand and contract under different temperatures, but the fact that they're checking so much that the block temperature is 20 degrees so that all of the clearances are going to be correct is something that I've never really thought about. I just kind of like looked at the overall temperature in the room and just assumed it'd be good to assemble. So I'm going to take that a little bit more seriously now for sure. But it's really cool to see that they go into such detail. And it makes sense because their engine building rooms are strictly kept at that same temperature as well. Obviously, massive thank you to Tomei for taking us on board and looking after our engine program this year. I cannot tell you just how more relaxed I am. Obviously, we still have to build a car in a week after this is done, but I am so much more relaxed and way more confident because the pros are doing it. So massive thank you to Tomei, and I'm really excited to see how not only I perform this year, but how the engine performs. I can't wait for the dyno day. I think that's going to be cool.
あれですよね。11って言われたので、って言いましたよね。
グッドエンジンが大事ですか？グッドドライバーが大事ですか？
今こう長い、シリンダーに対して炎上ロッドつけて、奥まで測れるようにシリンダーゲージの調整をしましたので、これから実際にメタルの内寸を測っていきます。
So what we're doing here is checking the clearance for all of the main bearings in comparison with the crank, and he's noting down the measurements for each main journal, and then from there we minus that from the measurement from the crank, and that will give us our bearing size. But yeah, it's really interesting just the attention and detail they go through, and at what, like, all the different points that they're also measuring on. They're not just like going, oh, this is the overall size and measuring on the edge. They've got to measure in different places all around in that journal to make sure it's all the correct clearance. It's really cool. It's definitely way more proper than just using plastic gauge. It's time to get head. So the last time you saw us working on the head, we were getting it decked. It's been cleaned since then, and now it's time to start assembling, but we need to measure everything first. When your valve seats are cut, obviously that space has been removed, or that material has been removed, so then the valve will actually be sitting a little higher in the head than what it would have been before. So you need to recheck everything, and also because we're going to an inner shim setup for high RPM and not having that upper shim cracking or breaking under the cam, we're going to Tomei's full inner shim setup. We need to measure that anyways. So it's just something that you need to take into account whenever you're doing any kind of head work. So if you get your head back from the machine shop and they've gone and machined and recut all of the valve surfaces, you know, they've grinded those angles and stuff for you, your spec is completely different now because your valve has slightly moved up that tiny bit. So definitely need to recheck everything. But yeah, we can go through and do it. It's a mouthful, but let's get started.
このバルブのまずはこのステムエンドの位置をシートリングじゃないバルブスプリングシートの座面からずっと全部、拾ってきます。で測り方としてはこういう感じで測っていくと。
It's a really cool tool. It's designed to sit in the spring seat on the top while he holds the valve from behind, and then it's able to measure where the valve comes to. I'm always amazed at just how small JZ exhaust ports are. And we've had Tomei do a nice porting on this. But if you compare this to, say, like an RB head, you could almost fit your whole fist in there. I mean, over exaggeration, but it's almost like another, like two of these for each port. ですよね。RB 全然違うだよね。Yeah, RB ports are huge. It's just interesting because the intake ports are big. You can see here. But then they go to a small port like this. This might be hard to see on camera, and this was something that I didn't even know or expect from Tomei. But when they worked on the head, they cleaned all of the casting flashing that gets left on here. And it just shows the attention to detail with their workmanship. And like I said, I was not expecting this. Here's another really good example here. Look at all of it. They've all cleaned all of that off. And that's a good thing because it means the oil's going to flow down into the block a lot faster, but it's also good because it gives you that little bit of extra clearancing when it comes to putting your head studs in and a bunch of other things. Like there's definitely a few times when I've gone to do head studs on a JZ engine where the casting and flashing left over has been in the way of certain size sockets. But yeah, it's just, the workmanship on this is just incredible. One really important part of this entire engine build is going to be oiling. And this is a stock Toyota 2JZ oil pump. And I'm sure you guys have seen pretty much everywhere on social media, but for some reason, recently, a lot of people are having a lot of problems with the new oil pumps where the internal gears have been breaking, especially when you start making a lot of torque and a lot of power. And that's where the homies over at PRP come in, because they developed and made a billet gear that goes inside, as well as a backing plate. As you guys know, PRP has been a huge supporter of everything that we do, and we've been partnering with them for many years now. And last year, we were the first to make over 1,000 horsepower with their new billet gears, and it performed incredibly. Now, unfortunately, because that engine failed in a catastrophic way and sent material everywhere, it damaged everything in our oil pump, and there was just no way around that. So we've got new billet gears and their brand new billet backing plate, which will add more rigidity, more strength, and prevent any issues from happening. Also, I love that they come with new bolts that are a Allen head. The stock ones, they use the typical just, Stanley screwdriver plus method, which is very frustrating to get out. So we're gonna be installing that in our fresh one. I wanna just actually give you a comparison really quickly though. These are the billet ones here. And then these are the stock ones. So you can see this material here is cast aluminum that gets machined down. It's not very strong, it's very thin. And then this is the stock oil gear. Very different in the sense of material strength and rigidity. This is going to make sure we can make all that power and torque without having any oiling issues, which is super important. As we were explaining before, because all of the valve seats have been cut, the valves can be at different heights. So what has to happen is the stock, I guess they call it a valve spring like sheet, or it's a seat kind of shim, right? These little guys here, they look like really big washers, really thin, different sizes. What happens is when they set it all up, they'll measure everything and then they'll slip those in to take up the difference to make sure that the height and everything lines up. So you can stack them and put them in. You get the stock one, and then if you need a little more, you put that on and throw her in there. It's cool. When all the different sizes are here and stuff. And this is separate than inner shim のリフトとか違うですよね。
これはバルブスプリングのセット荷重を揃える、セット長を揃える。セット長を揃えることでセット荷重を揃える。そのためのシムになります。スプリングシートになります。
So this is to make sure that the space between the retainer clip that's holding the top of the spring and where the spring is seating is the exact same across the board, so that you're getting the same performance out of the spring across the board. It's interesting. I never even thought of doing that. That's crazy. なるほどね。すごい。
揃えると。
Yeah. And then after that, obviously, is the whole shim clearancing thing as well, making sure that that's in spec. So that's way after this. It's a lot more involved than initially I thought. Now it makes sense why it costs so much money to have a head done properly.
ヘッドを組み終わったので、それにシムを入れて、でリフターつけて、あとカムつけて、でクリアランスをシックネスゲージでチェックしていきます。で今カムを取り付けしているところです。
Awesome. So we're now at the stage where we're going to be clearancing and getting all the shims right for the cams. Any kind of machining work that we needed to get done has been finished with the head. All the preparations are done. So now we're at the final stage, which is final assembly and getting those clearances perfect for the cams with the inner shims. And I just want to show you. This is them here. We're going to be using the Tomei inner shim set. So you can see the top of the bucket has no shim. Stock JZ ones have a shim that sits in here, and they're really known for breaking and causing a lot of problems. When you go to an inner shim setup, it's exactly what the word is. There's a shim on the inside. Right now, this is nothing here, but we'll put one in there and show them in. これシムですか？
いや、シムじゃないです。
シムじゃないんですね。
はい、シムはこっちです。
そうですよね。
はい。
So this are all the shims that end up going inside them. These look very similar actually to the shims on SRs on the top of the rocker that kind of like balances it, the one that doesn't have the notch in it. But these are all the different sizes, so he'll go and check, test, check the clearance, then he'll be able to know exactly which shim goes in, and you can see he's been noting down everything here as he goes along. So cool. But also, I would hate to do a damn it SAMMIT moment and knock this entire tray on the ground. Because imagine having to then get like the measuring calipers to measure each individual shim. ちょっと最悪ですけど、一回でhave you ever dropped this? Have you ever not 押した？
それ最悪。
やってない？よかったよかった。多分最悪じゃない？全部書き握るでしょ。
それはやりたくないんで。
Yeah, you know,
一番こう大事に2つ目で。
it's so nerve-wracking that I'd never want to knock that over. I'd probably just throw it all in the bin and order it all from scratch. He's going to show us how he does it with the feeler gauges.
このリフトをしてないベースサークル側の測れるとこをまず測っていきます。
So we're checking not where the tip of the lobe is that moves the valve open. It's kind of like the back side of the cam. どのぐらい欲しいですか、クリアランス。
クリアランスはエキゾーストなのでこれは 0.3 ミリ、0.3 ミリです。
0.3 millimeters of clearance on the exhaust side is what you're looking for.
インテークは 0.2 ミリ。
On the intake, 0.2 millimeters. That's cool. Can't go wrong with the feeler gauge, man.
測っていきます。まだちょっと入ってこないんで。
And to be clear, you should be doing this on the stock ones too when you reassemble your head. As we said before, when the head goes off to be machined and they recut the surface for the valves, that kind of slightly moves things up a little, and then your spring preload could be different, as well as any kind of wear on your camshaft or the lifter itself. You should still be doing this when you assemble it. Something that I previously didn't do before, which is a big no-no. That's definitely the Aussie coming out of me though, she'll be right. Can't do that anymore. Not when we're dealing with competitive stuff and competition.
これ全部クリアランスが出るまで外してシム変えてやっていきます。
いつもどのぐらい何回いるですか？
まあでも今これ1回目なんですけど、まあ2回か3回かぐらいかなと。
Okay. So it takes normally like 2 to 3 times, normally around 3 times, he said, of undoing the cam, putting the cam back on, undoing it again, and each time, obviously, he has to follow the torque specs as well as the specific way that all of the cam caps need to go on. So it is time consuming, but it's worth it. This is why I love coming to Tomei, because this kind of stuff I can geek out over forever. This is a sectioned off head from a JZ. And Tomei-san pulled this out because I wanted to ask like the main differences between the Tomei inner shim kit. And you can see that the top retainer here for the spring is very differently shaped here because the stock one doesn't. Ooh, I just dropped a shim. And we're back. The stock one doesn't have the inner shim, so there's nowhere, like nothing here to house the shim in on the top of the retainer. This is the shim here that sits on the top, and when you have lots of high revving, this can slip off or break and crack and get destroyed, and then you drop a valve in bad time. But if you have a look at the Tomei ones, the titanium retainers have a much larger space there for these shims to go into there, for then the bucket to sit on top, eliminating the top shim setup. I know like those of you that experience already know all of this, but I want to explain it to you guys so you all understand. And here's the perfect example here. We can put the stock one back on there. That's what that looks like with the top shim that spins around there. And then this is the Tomei one with the inner shim inside. If I lift this up and be very careful, hopefully we don't drop the shim. Look, the shim sits there, just like in an SR. Really interesting. I love that. So cool. But obviously SRs have different lifters and all that type of stuff, but you know what I mean with the shim just on the top, that little disc thing there. Arigatou gozaimasu. That's so cool to understand like just how the engine works with the flow of the ports too.
これから腰下の方を組んでいきます。まずピストン、コンロッド、あとピストンリングですね。で、バリ取りをしてあるのでこれから、組んでいくようにします。で組むのは、フロントマークがあるので、フロントマークを基本に、ピストンと、コンロッド、組み立てる、そういう形になっています。あと、ピストンリングのギャップの位置があるので、それに合わせて、取り付ける位置決めて、組んでいきます。これは、 今日、組み立ての終了した状態です。
We've switched to solo mode now because we're here after hours assembling the engine. And there's something we need to talk about with these pistons though. These pistons are a little different than what Tomei usually uses with their 3.6 engine. でしょ、このピストンちょっと特別ですよね。
特別です。
Why is that? なんで？
ストロークが長いんで、ストローク、100ミリストロークに合わせてピンハイと、あとコンロットの長さも、それに収まるように設計しています。それと出力的にも耐えられるように、丈夫くしてあります。コンロットも専用の設計しています。
コンプレッションはこのピストン？
このコンプレッションは特注のスペシャルな、コンプレッションで、このクラウンが狭くなっているので、コンプレッションは10ですね。
10です。I'm really excited about these pistons. I think it's going to be very interesting. Yeah. And then what's this? Is this assembly lube?
これは透明のアセンブリベースです。
I didn't know you guys had your own brand. I'm going to have to order that.
Okay. こう塗って、初期、かじりにくくするための潤滑油の感じです。
すげえワコスのコラボ。
そうです。
That's really cool. That's big like flex stuff. すげえ。Oh yeah, I'm excited. So Tomita-san is going to start assembling and putting each piston on each conrod and all the rings and fixing them in their orientation. And then from there, we will be putting them into the block. クランク終わったですか？
今クランクが乗ってる状態になってます。で、さっきまでメタル合わせ終わらせたブロックにクランクを乗せてもう一度締めてる、そういう状態になってます。
Alright, so we're done with the crank, so it's pretty much now time to go. In the time that I had to go back to the shop and come back, they've already gotten this in, but the B-roll showed them checking everything and making sure all the measurements and clearances were good, so we're ready to roll. It's crazy. I can't wait to see a piston and a rod in there to see how close it gets to the side there and why the clearancing is needed. It's going to be good. Alright, let's go. Well, ladies and gentlemen, number 1 is in the hole. On to number 6 next, right? All right.
.今これで1番と6番に、ピストンを入れまして、でコンロットの方を今、1.5 キロでトルクをかけた状態です。この後角度締めをして、完成になります。
I can't stress to you guys just how incredible it is to be able to be here while the guys here at Tomei, Tomita-san specifically, is building my engine. All these little things that I never really thought about when I've been building my engines in the shop is just blowing my mind. You know, simple stuff like just before a conrod bolt had slipped and fallen into the tray under the engine block. Nothing's damaged on the bolt's totally okay, but it was tossed aside because it needs to be cleaned before using in the engine. And that just blows my mind because I would have just like picked it up and used it right away, right? But little things like that make a difference, especially when you're building an engine that needs to be making over 1,000 horsepower and revving really high. And these guys have been doing it for years, so it makes total sense. But absolute privilege and an absolute honor to be able to be here and see my engine being assembled and be able to learn and give you guys an inside look as well. Tomita-san, 本当にありがとうございます。These guys are spending their time after hours to do this. Also, Soai-san too.
Thank you.
I just wanted to give you guys a little bit of a tour of the bench here because I love how everything's laid out, especially with these trays. Game changer, all the different parts for the oil pan. These are the little oil gallery block off balls. I don't know what else to call them, but they go in the front of the block here, and they remove those to clean and make sure everything's good, and then put them back in when they're done. Obviously the head studs, all of the conrod bolts, including conrods, piston rings laid out with special, I think this is like the mecha towel. I love that actually. But that's to keep things clean obviously, and then the lube and everything. It's so cool just seeing how organized they are. I love it. I love the rubber mats too. That's a great idea for the benches. Some stuff I definitely want to integrate back home, and I need to get one of these. I don't know why I need this, but I want this. It's cool. A crank rotating, custom made. They made this here, but I don't know. Maybe we can make our own.
ヘッドガスケットを 1.2 ミリ使って圧縮目標通り10点出ましたんで、これで組んできます。
高圧縮高ブーストって最近の流行りっちゃ流行り。
そうですね、はい、でもそこがやっぱりサムらしいなっていうのは自分はすごい感じました。それでやりたい、チャレンジしたいっていうのは、楽しみだな、サムらしいなっていうふうに思いましたね。
ヘッドを乗せていきます。
Oh, that's a really cool idea. He puts the nut over the pick and then puts the pick on top of the head stud. Then that way when he lets go of the nut, it slides perfectly on top of the stud. Oh my gosh, why have I never thought of doing that before? I need to see if I can get a good angle of him doing that. That's such a simple, cool tactic. I feel like that's a perfect example of experience over just what you would learn in a textbook. So I don't think you'd find that in a textbook, that technique, but it's something you learn over experience from doing something over and over and over again and just thinking of a quicker, simple way of doing something.
Tomei Camshaft を組んでいきます。
So for those of you wondering, we're going 260N with a lift of 10.8. That's big boy lift. This thing's going to sound choppy. And then the exhaust are 270s with the same lift.
カムシャフトを組む時の注意として適当に締めてしまうとテンションが変なところにかかってしまうので折れやすく、折ってしまったりするので注意が必要です。特にこのリフトをしているところを中心に、力がかかるので、そこをまず押して平行に下ろしていくイメージですね。リフトしてないところを先に押してしまうことでこう折るような形で力を加えてしまうので特に注意が必要です。順番にこう平行に下に下ろしていくイメージを持って、取り付けを少しずつ取り付けをしていきます。半回転ぐらいをイメージして締めていけば、折ることはまずないと思います。少しずつ平行に下げていくことで、カムも無事取り付けができました。 急いで締めてしまうと本当に変な力を加えてカムを折ったり曲げたりすることになるんで、少しずつ丁寧にやっていくことでカムも、曲げたりせず、組み付けができるので、皆さん気をつけてカム取り付けしてみてください。
Before we go and put the exhaust cam in, I thought I'd take this opportunity. Oh,
チャイムだ。
what time is that? It's 6 o'clock. It's time to go home. But we need to... Sorry guys. Before we put this together, I wanted to show you guys the inner shim. So this is the shim in here. I'm going to see if I can get it to fall into my hand. I'll place that there. I'm trying to be very careful we don't damage anything. This is the inner shim that sits here now, like that. And then that goes on top of it. Now we don't have to worry about the cams hitting the shim, breaking the shim, or anything, dropping a valve or anything nasty. This is the way you want it done. Now, if you want to go another step further, if you're worried about anything, we could send these away and have these DLC coated, but honestly, the amount of times that we're going to be maintaining this engine, halfway through the season, this whole engine's getting pulled down, checked, and re-put back together. So this is going to be perfect for exactly what we need, and I'm really excited to see just how this thing's going to perform.
We have just arrived back at Tomei, and as you can see, there's been some pretty big progress on the engine package. The guys have been crushing it. A lot of accessories and things getting bolted on, water pump, current sensor, getting the alternator sorted out as well. But you've probably noticed there's a gauge up here for measuring top dead center, and there's a stock pulley on here because we're going to be checking the valve clearancing.
まず組み上がったエンジンのバルブタイミングをチェックしていきます。ピストントップの位置を出すようにしていきます。
I really like this assembly paste because it actually still sticks to the cam. Some of the other assembly loops that I've used, over time, let's say the engine's sitting for like a day before you do first start, you'll find that a lot of it has just like kind of run off the cams and down into the engine like oil. So definitely going to consider using this next time I assemble anything. You know, I've seen torque wrenches, but I've never seen a torque wrench this big. There's Big Daddy. Getting lined up. Torque いくつ
？33キロです。
もう一回30？
33キロ。
303。303 Newton meter.
そうそうそうそう。
Oh my gosh. I think the torque wrench is longer than the standard height of a Japanese person. Maybe. Ooh.
Okay.
It's the final piece, the oil cap.
Finish.
ありがとうございます. Oh wow. I feel like we need to take this to a shrine or something. Like, no, we've already taken it to the shrine and gotten the blessing because these guys built it. So, 本当にありがとうございます。頑張ってみます、今年。
頑張ってください。
Oh man, I'm so excited. Got the Ichiban covers on here. You guys know we love it, but so many new parts and everything we had to put on this because obviously we didn't want to use any of the old stuff that any type of contamination could have gone in a new engine. So just look at how nice these ports are. I can't wait to see the difference it's going to make. Everything about this is just incredible. Can't wait to see the results on the dyno. This thing is awesome. It's like a pallet jack, but smaller and awesome for moving engines. And then they have this custom jig that just bolts into the engine and holds everything. And we can put it all in my car and we're good to go. It just lines up with everything. Oh, it lines up with the stud on the oil band. And supports it perfectly for transport. So tomorrow morning I just bring that back to them and we're good to go. It's like these guys are like engine specialists or something, right? He has no idea what I just said. Did you know that Tomei is an engine specialist place?
Yeah.
The perfect fit. And it's in. She's in, baby. She's in.
ハムって俺実は結構昔から知ってんだよね、あ、いや挨拶してくるし気さくな外人ぐらいの感じでね、片言の日本語だけど一生懸命喋ってくれるから、こいついいやつなんだなってそれぐらい。
どちらかというといつの間にか日本にいたっていう、
そうだよね、
時々来てたのか。
そうそうそう、
前から
そうだ、なんかイベントとかサーキット歩いてると手振ってくれたらサムだったっていうのが結構多かったイメージなんだよね。だからこうやってちゃんと喋るようになったらここ何年だけど、でもずいぶん前から知ってるよね。頑張れ
応援してます。